I am gassed. Do the lights go off? Do the lights go off? We'll see in it, we'll see in it. We'll see in it, we'll see. Bro, I don't know if I want to put the lights off though. Cause look at me when I turn the lights off, yeah? Look. I turned purple. Why am I purple? But then bro, it's my curtains that make me go purple. Look. Why is that? Light has to stay. Actually, no. I'll put a hoodie on. Let's go. Melissa, what you got for us, darling?
I've worked as a nurse in multiple hospitals and facilities. Before the current hospital I work at, I worked at a geriatric hospital 30 minutes from my house.
What's a geriatric hospital?
I had experience working with older patients before, so this was nothing new to me. I had been working at this hospital for only a couple of weeks, and you'll soon understand why. This was on my second to last shift at this hospital, unbeknownst to me at the start of that night. I was working the graveyard shift, and I was running on negative hours of sleep. I was assigned to the Alzheimer's ward. The patients in this ward absolutely adored me. My presence as a young girl in her 20s among the residents of this ward who were otherwise left to themselves to float around in their minds, I'm sure saw me as a breath of fresh air. Someone who could tie them to the now or to the everyday.
That's nice.
If you're just left to yourself, you can mentally go to other places. But with someone else in your space, you're tied to that moment in time. I was dealing with a number of patients that night, but one was a little more restless than the others. Her name was Lena. This was my first night dealing with her, and she kept telling me anytime I'd enter her room about the voices
Lena? I've never heard
she kept hearing, and the man dressed in black she kept seeing in the corner of the room.
Oh, hell no.
The other lady in her room requested her curtain be closed before my shift started so that Lena would leave her alone. She was a sweet lady that smiled whenever I was around her, but she didn't say much and was very forgetful. Since I started my shift around 9 p.m., most of the patients were asleep by 11, but not Lena. Whenever she called me into the room, she'd be frightened of these alleged voices she was hearing, and the man in black that kept staring at her in the corner of the room. Not gonna lie, it was creeping me out a little. I believed that in her mind she was seeing and hearing these things, and I sympathized with her because I imagined them to be very scary. But still, I tried my best to calm her down.
I remember I played that schizophrenic game. Bro, that shit's awful. It's so scary, bro.
And get her to go to sleep. I didn't want to turn on the TV to calm her down because I wanted to be courteous of the other patient in the room. I held Lena's hands and told her it's okay, to breathe and to relax. I reminded her that she wasn't here alone, and I was always just a call away. This seemed to do the trick. Lena relaxed for a while, and the next time I came in the room, she was asleep.
Okay.
Once most, if not all, of the patients are asleep, the night goes much slower. Time almost moves in reverse. An hour or two later, I was in the linen room stocking my cart when I heard something in the room. It was a relatively small, dead quiet room. I had the door closed too. That's why hearing another noise was weird. I turned, saw nothing, and resumed stocking my cart. Then I felt what I can only describe to be a hand on my shoulder. I looked at my shoulder, jumped, and screamed, but there was nothing on my shoulder. There was no one in the room.
That shadow man's real.
I knew I felt something large basically grab my shoulder. I went out in the hall for a second to peek my head. No other nurses in sight. Dead quiet. I had nothing else to do but resume what I was doing. I continued stocking the cart until it was full. Then I turned to face the door, and I fell to the floor and started screaming as my heart was immediately in my throat.
What?
There was a man dressed in black standing outside the door,
Oh,
looking
hell
through
no.
the glass, smiling. My screams were loud enough to wake the entire ward.
That shit's
The
real.
man disappeared out of sight through the glass window of the door. Seconds later, the door opened
Completely
and one of my
forgot to turn it
fellow
on.
nurses came in to help me off the floor as I was hysterical. I asked her if she saw the man dressed in black. Her response was, "What man? There's no one else here."
Oh, hell.
We checked all the rooms in the ward. There wasn't anybody dressed in black in there.
Oh, hell.
My screams woke Lena from whatever light sleep she must have been in, and when I came into her room, she started talking of the voices. This time the screams, which she didn't know were my screams. I asked her what this man in black looked like, if he was smiling, and she looked at me, and I noticed her eyebrows point down, as her expression changed to look the most focused I'd seen her the entire day. She asked, "How did you know?"
How do you
And even
know?
with my heart still racing, I felt it skip a beat as she said this. She started screaming now, screaming, "Get me out of here, he's coming."
Oh,
The other
fuck
nurses
that.
came in and tried to calm her down. I was switched to a different ward that night with someone else, and I eventually ended up going home early because I was just so freaked out.
Yeah.
I texted the head nurse the next day that my next shift would be my last, that the
Mhm.
experience traumatized me, and that I didn't really want to be in that building anymore.
Fair enough.
I got as friendly of a response as I could have hoped for. I've never been diagnosed with anything, nor have I ever dealt with hallucinations of any kind. I'm aware of the effects of lack of sleep, but this was next level. I don't know if my mind started playing tricks on me from what Lena was telling me all night, but the feeling of the hand on my shoulder, the image of the smiling man behind the glass door,
Lena's
matching the
possessed, bro.
description a patient kept giving multiple times. This was one of those once-in-a-lifetime, unexplainable supernatural occurrences. At least, I hope it was once in a lifetime.
Lena's got some fucked up shit. Anonymous. Wow.
3 years ago, I contracted bacterial
fuck is that?
meningitis. I live in South Florida. I don't believe there was an outbreak going on or anything, so I'm not sure how I caught it or who I could have caught it from. I started developing really bad symptoms,
Ooh.
painful headaches, confusion, sleepiness, nausea, and lack of appetite. But when the hallucinations started, that's when I knew I had something really serious. Laying sick in
Fuck
bed
that.
while my husband was at work, I heard a child's voice call Mom from downstairs.
Oh, hell no.
We don't have any kids. I dragged myself out of bed to look down the
But the Among
stairway
Us
to
song.
call my husband's name. Of course, he didn't answer because he was at work. The headache I had from standing was too much,
Oh,
so I
hell
went
no.
back to bed. For a second time, I heard a voice call from downstairs. It said hello.
Hello.
I picked
Oh,
up the phone
this
and
is
called
so
my
weird,
husband,
man.
freaking out to him into the phone that I was hearing a scary child's voice from inside the house, and that I thought I was hallucinating. He heard how distressed I was over the phone, and so he left work early to bring me to the hospital. While waiting for him to get home, I changed out of my pajamas, and while doing so, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up. As I was mid-throwing up,
Oh, no.
I heard another voice from outside of the bathroom.
Mm-mm.
I couldn't hear what it might have
Mm-mm.
said, nor could I tell if it sounded the same as the other voice I heard. I was losing my mind. I wasn't diagnosed until I arrived at the hospital, and apparently, if untreated, what I had could be very serious, even fatal. The
Really?
doctor told me the hallucinations part was rather unusual, but not unheard of. I was given antibiotics through a needle shortly after I arrived at the hospital with my husband. The doctor told me that I was fortunate to have come to the hospital so quickly, as if I had waited much longer, this could have had lasting effects or possibly have been fatal. My husband stayed
fuck
with me
she
for a few
got?
hours in the room. I was told I was going to have to stay there for a few days to a week, given the severity of my symptoms.
The hell, man?
Around 10 o'clock, my husband left to go home, as he had work the next day. The nurse told me call her if I should have any issues. Though I still felt like absolute death, I nodded off pretty quickly.
Okay.
I started having this dream where my ex-husband was in the room, over my bed, looking
Oh,
down at me,
oh,
talking.
hell. Oh, fuck
He was
that.
saying horrible things about my current husband.
Oh,
He patted my head and said he was glad I was okay. and that
Okay.
he came as soon as he saw my husband left.
okay.
He went into this rant about how he despises my current husband and wants to kill him.
Oh, that's not
He
nice.
kept rubbing my forehead, then left the room. I often have bad dreams about my ex-husband because of how toxic and abusive our marriage was,
Oh, boy,
why
is
it
that
ended,
Discord on the
which
monitor?
I'd rather not include. I woke up in this drowsy, lightheaded state and looked around the room. There was a chair pulled up in front of my hospital bed.
Because he
but
actually
no one
was
was
there.
sitting in it. It wasn't like that when my husband left. It was still the middle of the night, so I went back to
Imagine
sleep.
her husband, her ex, was actually there.
Woke up the next morning to the nurse in the room. I told her about the weirdly
I'm getting
vivid
shivers.
dream I had, and she laughed and told me that wasn't a dream, that my cousin came to visit me last night.
Oh,
I told her I
cousin?
don't have any cousins that live in this state. She looked
Cousin? Cousin? Oh, her ex has finessed the system.
more serious now and said, "Well, someone who said they're your cousin David visited you late last night." David was the name of my ex-husband.
Oh boy.
After explaining better, the nurse got a doctor, and the doctor told me the antibiotics may have caused delirium, which hindered my ability to recognize sleep from wakefulness.
Nah.
That's why I was so vividly hearing what David was saying. I called my husband to tell him what happened, and of course he was livid and concerned. He came back again that night after work,
What the fuck?
but that day, I texted David, asking what the hell he was thinking visiting me, and how did he know I was in the hospital. My text delivered, but he ignored it. I sent a follow-up, telling him I heard all of his threats towards my husband and that I'd be getting police involved. And minutes later, he responded saying, "I never made any threats towards your husband. I was simply there when I heard what happened to make sure you were okay. You must have heard things in your sleep." I responded, "Stay out of my life or I'll get police involved again."
Bro, he could be telling
He
the
didn't
truth.
respond
You
after
don't know.
this. I never told my husband about the threats I heard in my drowsy half-asleep state, because I didn't know if they were real or not. With a mix of the antibiotics and my already having weird audible hallucinations the day before, I don't think it's impossible that what I heard wasn't actually what was said.
Honestly, though,
But
it could
I
be.
could be wrong. I left the hospital the next week.
Yeah, bro, these stories are fucking weird, bro. R. Davidson. Robert. Ruby.
I once matched this girl that I'm still friends with on Tinder, named Francesca. She seemed cool right from the bat. She had a sleeve of tattoos on her left arm, red highlights in her hair, and she had in her profile that she loved to work out.
Okay.
One of her pictures was taken on the rooftop of this cool-looking building with a sick view. I asked her where it was, and she told me it was some abandoned hospital on the edge of town that's super cool to explore at night,
Oh,
and super
that's
easy to
cool.
get into. There's usually one cop patrolling the huge parking lot at night to deter trespassers. But she said it was super easy to circumvent. She came up with the idea of us going there together as our first date of sorts.
Okay,
wanna
this
use
is
the word.
some weird shit, bro. She is a freaky bitch. Do you fuck her? Yeah, you having a good time, my friend.
Date. I was totally on board with it. She seemed cool, and it seemed like a cool, different kind of way to meet someone as opposed to the
I wouldn't do
usual
that.
let's get
I would
drinks.
not. Do not do that
I
shit.
picked her up from her house.
Do not meet someone off Tinder in an abandoned building. Like, come on, that is so dense. Like, it's not a Tinder story, but thank fuck, it's like not one of these ones where it's like you're gonna get
10
kidnapped.
minutes away,
Ugh.
and we drove the 20 minutes
I mean,
to
we
get
all
to the
know
hospital.
those stories. Fuck.
Those 20 minutes
Just
gave us a
don't do
nice
that.
chance to get to know each other a bit and get comfortable with each other's personalities for a little. When we got to the hospital, she told me to park on this dead-end street hidden by a bunch of tall bushes.
Oh my god, I'm beating
which was
mad.
a 5-minute walk to the inside of the hospital.
She might actually not be. She might
We
not
hopped
be
this
real.
little barrier separating the road from the hospital parking lot, and then we jogged across the
Oh, no,
wide
they're
open
together,
lot
okay, so
towards
she's
the
real.
grass right next to the entrance she said she always used. She led us to this broken window to the basement of the hospital.
She could be leading
It
him
seemed
in.
kind of creepy, but I signed up for this. I was glad I wore raggy jeans like she told me to, because I knew I was going to rip them on something. We used our phone flashlights. We didn't bring any special heavy-duty lights or
Oh,
anything.
that's a load of
She
shit.
seemed
then,
to know
innit?
this whole hospital like the back of her hand. She led us to the stairway to the upstairs. I gotta say, being alone with one other person in a place like this at night was very scary. But I had no idea how scary it was about to get.
Oh boy.
On the first floor, Francesca kept talking so loud that I almost wanted to tell her to shh.
Honestly,
I was paranoid we'd...
if you're in a abandoned building, just shut the fuck up. Keep it down. Like, especially if there's a police guard going around. Like,
be
common
found
sense.
out because of her voice. Down the corridor we were in, it sounded like a door was opening or closing.
Oh, fuck
Something
that.
echoed down the corridor to us. She heard it too and went silent. I asked her in a whisper, "Is it normal for others to be here?" And she said sometimes, but not really. We turned off our flashlights and waited. Suddenly there was a bang,
Yeah,
much
oh.
closer to us now.
Uh-oh.
We both scrambled in the dark. I followed her, barely
Fuck.
able to see. We made it back to the stairway and ran up the stairs with our lights back on.
Up.
When we were a couple levels higher, we felt it was okay to speak at a normal volume again.
Why wouldn't you leave?
Francesca told me the police never come in here,
Why wouldn't you
so it may
leave?
have been other explorers. But the weird thing was there was no sign of another light in that corridor. Nobody normal would be walking in the dark. Then we heard sounds echoing from the exit stair shaft, where we just were. Someone was coming up the
I'm
stairs.
just following you, boys.
Once again, we scrambled. She led the way, saying she knew where to go. We ran for a few minutes through this maze of a building. I was truly freaking out. It seemed like we were being followed, and I wasn't sure if I would rather have it been the cops or someone else.
The
She
feds,
led us
honestly.
to this mini outside spot.
Rather be
We
the
weren't
feds.
on the highest rooftop, but I guess we were on what you'd call the rooftop of this level. We stopped to catch our breath.
Okay.
The whole being followed thing was killing the vibe completely. Even she seemed concerned, and I looked to her as the expert with this place. After a few minutes, we relaxed a bit, and went through this broken window into the ceiling of this one large room.
Bro, just leave the
part was
building,
scary.
man.
Because she wanted to walk along these long, narrow wooden planks with a 10-foot drop below us.
Oh,
A fall from this height would cause injury, but I didn't want to seem like a pussy. I followed her across this sketchy long wooden board until we got to the top of this pillar where one board stopped and another one started. We sat on this pillar to just chill and talk, with our legs dangling over the edge overlooking the darkness below. It was creepy in there, and I thought we were all alone, until there was a sound from below us.
Oh, fuck.
It sounded like someone walking.
Oh, no.
Our presence was already
Oh,
made
no,
known
oh,
to
no,
whoever
oh,
was
no,
in
oh,
there.
no, oh, no.
So we turned on our flashlights and aimed them down below. And right below us, standing at the pillar, looking up at us, there was this 40-something-year-old man in a black Carhartt beanie, wearing a black jacket and black sweatpants. He smiled at us and said in this creepy deep voice, "Come on down," as he was waving us to come down.
Come on down. Come on down.
I asked, "Are you police?" He disregarded my question as if he didn't hear me and repeated, "Come on down," with his creepy smile. Francesca and I got up scared and started walking back across the narrow piece of wood.
You just gotta get out
I was
of the
even more
building,
scared of
man.
falling now than before. I had no idea what that man would do to us. As we were about halfway across, the man hurried out of the room below us through a door. He was most definitely going to try to catch us.
Yeah, bro,
We had to hurry.
This guy knows this shit like the back of his hand, mate. You're
We made
done.
it across and tried to get out of there, knowing that man was dangerous. As we were running down the stairs in a shaft on the opposite side of the hospital, we heard the door a few flights above us open and slam shut, and then footsteps stomping down the steps.
Above you? How has he got
Somehow
above
had followed us. We were hauling ass as if we were running for our lives.
But what if there's more than
We
one
made it
person?
back to the first floor, and we ran back to the opposite side of the hospital where we entered from. We went back to the basement and climbed through the broken window. The whole process of climbing through that window was haunting, because I went out second, and I was afraid my legs would be grabbed at any moment. But I think by that point we lost the man.
Okay, W.
We ran back across the parking lot back to my car, and when we made it, first thing we did was lock the doors and catch our breath again. That was a complete nightmare, and somehow, us getting through it together created a sort of instant bond between us. We drove away from there and stopped at a Wendy's to get food and just collect our thoughts in the car. We chilled for an hour just talking, and then I dropped her off.
Okay.
Francesca and I have stayed in contact through the years, and while we were romantically involved for a few months, we ended up just staying good friends.
Oh.
Neither of us ever returned to that hospital again.
If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Check out the main channel too. Yeah, bye-bye.